You've been working hard your entire life. Really hard. The kind of hard where you show up early, stay late, hit your targets, and do everything right on paper. And yet somehow, you're still falling behind. You're still watching your peers get ahead while you're stuck in the same place, working just as hard, but not seeing the same results. If that feeling resonates with you, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to change how you see your money. My name is going to stay private for this story, but I'm a Black millennial woman, and I'm 40 years old, and I just did the math on something that broke my heart a little bit. By the time I hit 40, a single financial decision I made in my 20s, combined with a bunch of small systemic things I didn't even realize were working against me, cost me $50,000. Not in 1 year, not in one bad investment. $50,000 over the course of 2 decades, compounded through choices I thought were responsible, obstacles I thought were just part of the game, and prices I paid that I didn't even know were gendered. It started the way it starts for a lot of people like me. I graduated from college with degrees and debt. I had a good job, the kind of job that looked impressive on a resume. I was making solid money, not rich money, but solid. The kind where I could pay my bills, maybe save a little, and feel like I was doing okay. And I was doing okay by a lot of measures, but there's a difference between doing okay and building wealth, and I didn't understand that distinction until it was too late. When I was 28, I decided I wanted to buy a house. It felt like the right move. Everyone was buying houses. The media told me it was the path to financial security. My family told me it was an investment. My friends were doing it. So I saved up for a down payment, got my credit score up, and went to talk to a mortgage broker. This is where the first big number started forming, though I wouldn't understand its full weight for years. The mortgage broker looked at my application and told me the rate I qualified for. I was approved, I was excited, and I signed the papers without doing the research I should have done. The rate was 6.2%. At the time, I thought that was just what mortgages cost. I didn't know, and nobody told me, that my white colleagues with similar credit scores and similar incomes were getting rates around 5.8%. That difference, that gap, that I didn't even know existed, compounded over the life of a $300,000 loan. Let me break down what that actually meant. If you borrow $300,000 at 6.2% over 30 years, you're paying about $687,000 total. If that same loan was at 5.8%, the total would be around $625,000. The difference is $62,000. $62,000 more that I paid over 30 years because of a rate gap I didn't even know I was entitled to question. But here's the thing. I didn't lose all $62,000 to that rate gap. I lost money from that gap, sure, but the real $50,000 loss came from what I did with the money I did have. While I was making that mortgage payment every single month, I was also doing something else that felt responsible at the time, but was actually costing me everything. I was budgeting. Now, budgeting sounds good. It sounds responsible. It sounds like something a financial advisor would recommend. And for certain situations, it is. But what I did wasn't healthy budgeting. What I did was strict, penny-pinching, neurotic budgeting, where I tracked every single dollar and made sure I never spent a dime I didn't have to spend. I had a spreadsheet. I had categories. I had contingencies. I was terrified of debt, and that fear made me freeze. While I was budgeting those extra dollars at the end of each month, money that I could have invested in the stock market, I was watching the market grow without me. From 2009 to 2019, the S&P 500 returned roughly 10% per year on average. If I had taken just $500 a month, just $500, and invested it in a basic index fund for those 10 years, I would have had around $85,000. Instead, I had a spreadsheet and a pat on the back for not overspending. But wait, it gets worse. Because while I was hyper-focused on not spending money I didn't need to spend, I was also paying more for the things I did need to spend money on, and I didn't even realize it. This is the gendered price markup, the tax on being a woman, specifically a Black woman in America. It's real, it's documented, and it costs thousands of dollars over a lifetime. I started noticing it when I was in my mid-30s. I went to get a haircut. I asked the stylist how much it would cost, and she told me $85. That felt high, so I asked my brother what his haircuts cost. He said $35 at the same salon. I was literally paying nearly 3 times as much for the same service because of my gender. That was just the beginning of noticing the pattern. I went to the dry cleaner to drop off a suit jacket. The woman at the counter quoted me $8 to dry clean it. I asked her to dry clean a man's suit jacket too, and it was $5. Clothes shopping was the same story. I'd buy a basic t-shirt, and it would be $30. The men's version, same brand, same material, same size range, would be $22. Women's razors cost more than men's razors. Women's deodorant costs more than men's deodorant. Women's shampoo, women's skincare, women's everything costs more. Now you might be thinking, that's just a few dollars here and there. Haircuts and t-shirts aren't going to add up to $50,000. But they do. They absolutely do. Let me do the math. If I spent an extra $30 a month just on gender pricing across all the categories where I was paying more, that's $360 a year. Over 20 years, that's $7,200. But that money, if it had been invested instead of spent on overpriced women's products, would have grown. $7,200 invested over 20 years at 10% annual return would be worth around $18,000. But it's not. And it wasn't just haircuts and shampoo. It was also the time I spent on all of that budgeting. The hours and hours I spent tracking receipts, making sure I wasn't overspending, planning every purchase. That cognitive load, that mental burden, it's a real cost. It's a cost that kept me from focusing on the things that actually build wealth, like understanding how to invest, learning about financial markets, networking with people who could help me grow my career. I was so focused on not losing money that I never learned how to make money grow. I was so afraid of getting into debt that I refused to take on good debt, the kind that could have accelerated my career or education. I turned down opportunities to go to conferences because I was worried about the travel costs. I didn't invest in certifications that could have boosted my earning potential because they felt like unnecessary expenses. And while I was doing all of this, my peers who had family money, or who came from backgrounds where financial risk-taking was normalized, were doing the opposite. They were taking calculated risks. They were investing in themselves. They were getting mortgages with better rates because they knew to shop around, or because family connections helped them get better deals. They were taking small amounts of money and turning them into bigger amounts. They were building wealth, not just building a budget. By the time I was 35, I was starting to wake up. I was reading books about investing. I was listening to podcasts about wealth building. I was realizing that everything I thought I knew about money was wrong. The fear-based approach, the scarcity mindset, the hypervigilance around spending, it wasn't protecting me. It was hurting me. And I started to change my approach. I opened an investment account. I started putting money into the stock market. I stopped tracking every single dollar and instead focused on my total net worth trajectory. I got more intentional about my career and my earning potential. I started pushing back on gendered pricing. If a service quoted me a price that seemed high, I asked what the male equivalent cost. Sometimes I switched providers. Sometimes I negotiated. And I started seeing results. But here's the hard truth. That shift happened too late for me to recover that $50,000. That money is gone. It was lost through the mortgage rate gap, through years of underinvesting, through gendered pricing that I was paying without question, through a scarcity mindset that kept me playing defense instead of offense. And that's the real story here. It's not just about one financial mistake. It's about how systemic barriers, personal choices, and societal expectations combine to cost me more than most people make in a year. But this story doesn't have to end the way mine did, and that's why I'm sharing it. If you're in your 20s or 30s right now, if you're just starting to think about your financial future, there are things you can do to make sure you don't end up in the same place I did. First, understand your options. When you're getting a mortgage, get quotes from multiple lenders. Know what rate you should be getting. Don't assume the first quote is the only quote. Research matters. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. Budgeting is about restriction. Investing is about growth. You don't need to track every dollar, and you definitely don't need to be so afraid of spending that you never take calculated financial risks. Open an investment account. Put money in regularly, even if it's just $50 a month, even if it's just $100 a month. Start putting money into the stock market. Time is your greatest asset when you're young, and the earlier you start, the more compound interest works in your favor. Third, recognize the gendered pricing tax and actively resist it. This one is personal. This one is about acknowledging that the system is not neutral, and that by shopping around, by asking questions, by sometimes choosing the men's version of a product or service, you can keep more money in your pocket. It's not fair that you have to do this. It shouldn't be this way. But until it is, you have to be aware of it. Fourth, invest in yourself. Your earning potential is your greatest wealth-building tool. If there's a certification, a degree, a course, a conference that could increase your income or improve your career trajectory, seriously consider it. Yes, it costs money upfront, but if it increases your earnings by even $10,000 a year, it pays for itself quickly. And that extra earning potential compounds over a career. Fifth, understand that your financial story might be different from someone else's, and that's okay. If you come from a background where systemic barriers are real, where the starting line is different, where you're fighting headwinds that others aren't, that's not a personal failure, that's a reality. But understanding that reality, naming it, and building a strategy around it, that's powerful. I'm 40 years old. I can't go back and change the choices I made in my 20s. I can't recover that $50,000, but I can keep building. I can increase my earning potential. I can invest aggressively now. I can help others understand what I wish someone had told me when I was 28 and signing a mortgage with a rate that was too high. The path forward isn't about being perfect with money. It's not about never spending money or tracking every dollar or being afraid of financial decisions. It's about being intentional. It's about understanding how the system works, where the barriers are, and making choices that build wealth instead of just building security.